I don't even know what we're talking about today, Matt, but it's all right.
Okay, well,
you drive the ship.
The first thing I need to know is, what's the name of the show these days?
Not Your Boring Money Show, Financial Freedom for Busy Parents.
All right, I have notes. I think you should make it longer. I think the name of the show should be longer. Hey, it's Matt Robison with Mike Morton on Not Your Boring Financial Show, financial notes for busy parents who also happen to be sports fans and like cultural references and generally want to remove stress from their lives and keep things simple and practical and not have larded onto them the weight of how to optimize everything you're doing in your life and make it perfect, because that's a bunch of social media performative BS that none of us can tolerate. That's the new name of the show, Mike.
Wait, I can't fit that on the cover art. I don't think that's going to fit in that
what
little.
You have already on the cover art, so you're not any worse off. All right, this is a very exciting episode, and by exciting I mean terrifying for me, because this is the most meta episode we've ever done, and I'm about to go through the ringer on this, and this is very stressful. But what we've been talking about in recent shows, a whole bunch of kind of related themes. We've been talking about your scheme to how to legally money launder, right? We'll talk more about that in a second, but how to get money out of one account that's not a great account and get it into other accounts that have much better benefits. That's a problem a lot of people have, including me. And then there is a question of are you really saving enough or not? And that's a question that I've had on my mind. And then there's the question of, should you spend your money? Should you feel comfortable spending more of your money? So we've been on a run of listener questions recently, and I became a listener questioner. I sent you an email. True story. I'm not making this up.
Story.
I sent an email to you about a month ago, and I'm like, hey, I have a bunch of questions that I want to just ask you offline. And I even volunteered like a freaking idiot. What was I thinking? I was like, maybe we can even find a way to turn this into show content. And you're like, I have you now.
Perfect.
Yes. Thanks, Darth. So I couldn't back out of that. That was a legally binding listener question. So what we're going to do today, if I understand correctly, is we're going to unpeel this live. We're going to record this. We've barely prepped it. We don't know what's about to happen here. I'm just going to fire my questions at you, and you are going to, and I think a lot of people probably have these same sets of questions, right?
Yeah. This is great. Matt. So you're telling me you are the listener question. Today's episode is just one big listener question.
It's
from
a big
our host.
listener question. It's like the rug in The Big Lebowski. It ties the room together. This ties together a lot of the discussions we've been having recently and our listener question. And at the end, to get even more meta, I'll finally give you, as our one thing segment, the follow-up on a challenge, a bet that you and I had about 2 months ago. I finally followed through. I made it happen, and I have the results. So,
all right. I'm excited to hear that. So today, and today, to continue to set the stage, I mean, this is really what comes across my desk all the time. People coming to me for financial planning, they walk in with exactly the questions that you have, Matt. It's like, hey, I've done some good savings, right? Things have been going well. I started early. My kids are now getting a little bit older. We've saved some money. It's invested across multiple accounts. And now things are getting real. And by real, I mean crazy. Kids are all over the place. They're starting to get very expensive. I'm no longer able to save, what I used to be able to save.
Right.
The dollars are getting real. Hey, now we're talking 500,000, $1 million, maybe a couple of million. The numbers are real. You don't want to kind of screw it up. You can see retirement, it's still fuzzy, but it's coming into focus, right? It's no longer, 3 or 4 decades away. So it's like, ooh, are we going to be able to reach that? Are we on the right track? So, and then, like you said, the combination of all those factors, right? We've done a lot of episodes on specific parts of them, but of course, in the real world, they all come together. How do you balance, education savings, spending, retirement savings, investments, different accounts? So today we won't be able to cover everything. We're going to do it, pretty quick show. But we like to hit on some of those topics to give everybody a sense on how to think about all those trade-offs in the real world.
I want to get right into it without much further stage setting. I will just comment quickly that I think what you just said leans into your whole concept, not just for the show, but for kind of what you do with clients. Like for the show, our thesis is that people aren't as interested, like there are maniacs out there who I respect and like, if this is your thing, who want to optimize everything. But we suspect that most people want practical answers to these kinds of questions. And that's sort of the whole concept of the show here is like, can you, without getting down into nitty gritty details, can you get pretty good answers pretty fast? And that's also, I'm hoping that this conversation kind of gives people a window into, hey, look, you can get a pretty good, reasonable, high level first approximation that helps you make decisions pretty quickly. And then, of course, you can always, if people want, they could hire someone like you to do the detailed version. So, okay.
Hey, let's start with, we had a couple of different things here. Matt, let's start with the retirement question.
You want to start retirement?
Are you on track? Okay. Yeah, let's start with that because it's kind of big picture, like you got the accounts and the savings. So let's start with, am I on track for retirement?
All right, so ground rules here. We did agree before we started this that I'm not going to give specific numbers, but I will try to give a specific situation since I'm the guinea pig here. And you may make up, just to illustrate, some numbers to plug in to make this more real for people. I'll give generalities. All right.
Okay.
So the one of the questions that I fired at you in a real email that I actually sent you was, am I generally on track for savings for retirement or not? And what I did was I wasn't sure kind of which rule of thumb to use. There's lots of rules of thumbs out there. Like, at this age, you should have this X, like this amount times your spending. So what I did is I lined up all my spending. I did like a year end. I went back. I figured out everything that we spent. I came up with a number. And then I looked at our entire income and I did a comparison. And then I made a little table for myself. Like, well, if I was looking for 3X, I'm 50 years old. So if I'm looking for 3X, it would be this number that I should have saved. If I'm looking for 5X, it should have been this number. So first question, is this a reasonable way to go about this? Like, am I even on the right track in terms of how I think about this?
Yeah, I definitely think so. It's a great starting point. And there's two things I mentioned here. One, that you tracked your actual spending. And that's really important, all right? Because without knowing your spending for a year, take your yearly spending, we can't really make assumptions about the future or how it's going to play out. So that's really important. Now, a cheat here you can do is just take your income minus your savings, and maybe you assume that you spend all that if you're kind of breaking even by the end of the year, okay? So you could do that if you make $300,000 and you save $50,000, then you're spending the other $250,000. Okay, so that would be your annual expenses. But that's annual expenses are really important to know. And the second step there that we probably won't get into today is some of those might drop off, right? Like if a bunch of that's your mortgage and that finishes in 10 years, then obviously that expense drops off. Kids at home, we both have kids at home. They could be very expensive. Some of those might drop off. Now I'm hesitant, because you'll probably spend more travel to go and see them, and you'll still have many costs, even in their 20s, from other parents I've talked to. But still, maybe you got private school, other things. So, but first, yearly expenses. Now your second question, taking that and multiplying it, and kind of where are you? Yeah, rule of thumb would be that you need to save investments maybe 20 to 25 times those expenses. Okay. So if that
by the time you retire.
By the time you retire.
Okay.
Correct. So if your annual expenses are $200,000, then you need to have saved about $5 million. Now, before you go running out the door, like, what? I'm not even close to 5 million. Okay, hold on. Hold on. First of all, things are going to inflate in the future. Things are, compounding. So even if you're a third of the way there or, a quarter of the way there, you got 1 million or 1.5 million. Hey, you're on the right track. You're getting close. It's going to double again. It's going to get you pretty close to that 5 million. All right. So don't go screaming out the door. But the reason we go 20 to 25x, because the inverse is that then in retirement, you will spend 4% of that portfolio each year. And that's a reasonable starting assumption. Now, one last caveat, Matt, and then I'm happy to answer more questions, is Social Security is a big part of this too. All right. So that's just your portfolio and your current living expenses. Many people I work with have been paying into Social Security for a long time. Social Security is real money. It's thousands of dollars a month. It can add up to 40 or 50 grand in a year. It's real money. So that plays an important factor as well.
Okay. That's really good. That's really good. If I discovered that I was about 4.5x at age 50 spending, am I on track, above track, or below track?
Yeah, I don't have that off the top of my head, Matt, because I don't have those data points. I've seen a chart, and we'll put it in the show notes, that tracks, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, where you should be. It does compound very quickly in your 50s and 60s. So I think you're right on track. If I recall, it's like somewhere between 5 to 7x is where you kind of want to be right now. And it's going to quickly get to 15 and then to 25 over the next 15 years. And so I think you are right on track, but we'll leave in the show notes. And I will say on your bank, looking up the bank, that's a great place of doing it. A lot of my clients also look up their credit card statements. Year-end credit card statements is another great place. A lot of people just run most of their stuff through a credit card, 1 or 2 credit cards. And that's another great place for just grabbing that aggregate data.
We talked in our last show about potential inheritance. I didn't account for that. I didn't include the value of our home. So well, let's talk about those just really briefly. Yeah. The value of your home, you may not want to count. We've talked about this before. Yeah. Depends on your home. So like I have plans personally in my home. I know I'm going to downsize to something that's going to be less expensive. Like I just know that based on where we live now and the kind of house we have and what I want in the future. Now, overall, my lifestyle be less expensive? Probably not. Okay. But I do know I can get some equity from my house and use it in other ways. So I do kind of like mentally bank on that a little bit. So I might add that to my net worth, that investable asset to try to see if I'm at 5 or 6 or 7x where I am. I'm going to add a little bit of my home equity. Keep in mind your current value of your house. And if it's reasonable and you think that's the kind of lifestyle you like, then don't include it. You need a place to live. All right. But if you have a very nice home in a downtown area, maybe it's appreciated, it's worth a couple $1 million. Yeah, you could probably think, I probably won't have a couple $1 million home for the rest of my life. Especially the other piece there is long-term care needs. Okay, you can use the value in your home to help cover those needs, so you don't need outside money. So that's a really good point as well when it comes to your house. Now, very briefly on the inheritance, we just had that episode. And so everybody, I leave it to you to think if you want to factor some in or not. What I said in that episode is I hate for people to really be grinding for many years in sort of a high income job, so that they can make their retirement ends meet. And then get a $2 million inheritance 10 years from now and be like, wait, why did I work so hard for so long? And now I sort of have this extra money. So factor it in depending on your particular situation and how you want to think about it. Okay, that's really helpful. We can move off of this. And actually, this is a good segue to my next question for you, because the reason I handled, for me, the potential for some inheritance someday this way is that the biggest driver of expense is education, future education expense, and current education expense for my kids. And so the way I thought about that was, look, right now, our kids are in a private school, and they're going to, we believe, our plan, but things could change. We believe that they're going to move to a public school, all of them over the next few years. But I'm not accounting for that as any savings because I want to take the money we're putting into that and just plow it all into college savings. And in fact, for the foreseeable future, I'm anticipating that any excess savings that I have is probably going toward that and trying to reduce the education cost burden that they will have. And you've given the guidance on previous shows that thinking about it as like a third is a good way to go, right? Like a third parents, a third on the kid, and a third from loans. And I'm just generally factoring the idea that, hey, if there's inheritance, if there's extra savings, I'll probably try to put it toward that. But that gets me to my next problem, which is, like many people, I think many people, or maybe other people are a lot smarter than I made the classic mistake of, okay, I'm saving. This is great. Put it into a brokerage account. That's great. It is in an account that is grown significantly. That's great. Never invested it in a tax preferred account of some kind. So I want to do your legal money laundering scheme and try to take that money and move as much of it as I can into 529 or IRA or Roth IRA. So could you just remind people what's the scheme and is that generally a good idea?
Yeah. And let me run through it really quickly. There's going to be a lot of jargon right here, Matt. Okay.
Right. But you have a whole episode on this.
We got whole other episodes. Yeah. All right. So let's say I run across this all the time. People come in, great savers. Hey, I've got, 300,000 or 400,000 in my brokerage account. I'm putting some money in my 401k. I've never used an IRA, or maybe I did that like 5 or 6 years ago. And I want to start saving for my kids' college. Okay. So here's what we need to do. One, the 529s for the kids' college, come up with a target amount. Maybe it's that third pre-saving a third of their future college expense and put that in the 529. So you just take 50 grand, 30 grand per child, 60 grand total, and put it in a 529. You can transfer from your brokerage to a 529. No, there's not really a lot of limits. There are, but it's hundreds of thousands. Okay. Your IRA, you need to start doing that every single year. You put money into your individual retirement account every year. There's a yearly limit, so you just kind of do it every year. All right. Whether it's traditional or Roth IRAs, go back and check the episodes, but make that part of your plan. The final piece is that the legal money laundering piece, because I know we might get to income and expenses and how tight things are these days with 3 kids that are getting bigger. You want to put the maximum into your employer retirement accounts, 401ks, 403bs, 457s. You want to maximize those. And if you work for yourself or you have a side hustle, solo 401ks. So Matt, I know that might apply to you because you make so much money as a host of this show.
Right.
So you can have potentially have a solo 401k, and you need to shove as much money into those accounts as possible. So that's a big laundry list of places that you want to put your money. So better than having 300,000 or 400,000 in your brokerage account is having money sprinkled in these other tax advantaged accounts. And you got to get started on it because you can only do so much each year.
So the important thing here to me is just to be very upfront about the fact that I've got X dollars in a brokerage account. And I have 529s and I have an IRA. And what I want to do is I'm going to take the hit. This is the key point to me.
Oh, you got to sell some of
I got to sell
an
amount in this brokerage account that I'm going to transfer up to the legal limits that I can transfer. Yeah. I'm going to sell that and I'm going to take a hit on capital gains.
Yeah.
And that's going to hurt. That's going to cost me this year. But in the long run, we're better off, between now and the time because of the growth we're going to get in those 529s and those IRAs.
Absolutely. Now, first you're going to spread it out. Your IRA is only 7,000 or 8,000 a year per person. So you're not like, and your capital gains isn't going to be all of that anyway. So, you're paying a few hundreds in taxes to transfer that $7,000. So you're going to do the IRAs every year, Matt. So you definitely want to do those. The 529, you want to make some educated assumptions about how much you're going to spend for college, what you are going to spend, and then pre-save some of that. So again, it might be, and you can do this over the following couple of years. So maybe it's 15 grand a year per child, which again is not, is a lot, but it's not going to kill you on the capital gains. Okay. So come up with a plan for like a 3-year plan. Hey, I'm going to do 10 grand a year for 3 years per child. Okay. And then the 401k stuff is kind of a deeper conversation. That's where that kind of money laundering stuff comes in, where you're going to spend from that brokerage account. But all of it is absolutely worthwhile, but don't do it all at once. Don't do like 300,000 all in 1 year. Spread it out over like a 3 or 4 year plan.
Right. Okay. All right.
Well, wait, Matt, I got to leave this on this. You brought this up with me before. You need to actually write it down and do it. So when are you going to write it down and like make this happen?
Well, there was a 2-month, when we get to our one thing segment at the end, there was about a 2-month time lag. But in this case, I can't give myself a full 2 months. We're recording this at the beginning of February. If I want to do this action for the 2024 tax year.
That's right.
And do it for 2025, all in one swell foop, I need to get on it. So I'm going to, and I've got to start pulling my taxes together anyway. So I'm going to do this as part of that whole process. I am going to say that this is going to be done by March 31st, because that's when I have to do it.
All right, March 31st. And by the way, let's make a note to do a longer episode on the 529. How do you figure out how much to do for your 529? Is it 10 grand a year, 20 grand a year? Like, how do you figure that out? Let's go a little bit deeper on that topic.
It's funny you should mention, because I've got a whole spreadsheet here, a college calculator spreadsheet that has just got a lot of red in it right now. And I would love to do that. But this is actually a perfect segue. It's a perfect segue to the final question that I sent to you, which was, given the answer to number 1, the retirement savings, and given the answer to number 2, how I'm going to do this like financial transubstantiate. No, that's blasphemous. How I'm going to do this alchemy of turning brokerage account dollars into IRA and 529 dollars. And eventually the 529s is going to go into, it's all circles back. That becomes the biggest source of expenditure for us. What about the discussion that we just finished having about spending money and trying to enjoy life along the way and giving yourself permission to, hey, we need to take trips. We need to go to events. We need to do things that enhance our lives now and not just obsess about, scrooging our way to retirement. Where does that land? Like, I have right now, what I determined from my personal calculations is we are saving more each year than we are spending, which is great. We are a little bit in the black, which is terrific. But I feel like we need to be saving more toward college. And I feel like, as I do this transfer, there's going to be more capital gains taxes as I try to liquidate some of the funds in the brokerage account. That amount that we're in the black could get eaten up pretty fast. So where do you land on that?
Well, good news that you're in the black, because the last couple of years I've been in the red, which is even worse. I'm living in your spreadsheet, your college cost spreadsheet. And here's the bottom line with this statement. You have to have a plan. All right. It all starts with, let's make sure you have a plan, which is what we talked about for the last 20 minutes. All right. Planning for retirement, planning for college costs, planning for other expenses, or you're, changing jobs and careers and moving homes or whatever it is. You need a plan, and the plan should give you confidence to be able to spend your money to enjoy your life. That's why we do planning. So in your case, Matt, we've talked a few times, and even with the high cost of, some private education and whatever else, and kids getting, to this age where, did I tell you this, Matt? Yesterday, I spent over 3 hours driving my kids. Not going anywhere for me, just literally dropping them off. 3 hours I was in the car, driving back and forth, just driving them to locations, dropping them off. So things are busy and expensive, all right? And you should definitely take some time and money and energy to enjoy where you are. But just do it with a plan. So in your case, I don't know the specifics, but I'll speak for my case. I was in the red for a couple of years. Now we're kind of back in the black, but it's expensive years. These are expensive times. We're saving for college and doing other activities. And it's going to change. My mortgage is going to go down. Other expenses are going to radically kind of change. So having a plan for that. And especially lastly on this topic, getting a third party to help look at that plan, whether it's a partner, a friend, a colleague or somebody, because when you're in the box, you can't find your way out and it's all stressful. But if you have someone else kind of comment with you and give you permission, then it can be really helpful.
Well, I think that's a great landing place for this conversation. And I feel like I've hopefully made it through this guinea pig scenario relatively unscathed. And the good news for everyone who's watching and listening out there is you don't have to do this as part of a broadcast. It's time for our one thing segment.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So about 2 months ago, we did an episode where we talked about recurring expenses, all the little, nickel and dime, death by 1,000 cuts things. And we talked about, wow, what would it really take to go through and figure out, do you have like recurring things that are like hidden, you didn't even know you had, that are just, you're getting dinged with them every month? What would it take to figure out what they are and to start getting rid of the ones you don't need? And how much could you save from that? And I have an answer. I did it. First of all,
42.
Yeah, 42. But what was the question? So first of all, the first answer is I did this process. It took me, I would say, to do the actual calculation, it took me about 10 to 15 minutes. All I did was I went into my bank. I got my credit card statements for 4 months as a sample. I took all of them and I copied and pasted. I did an Excel download, copied and pasted into one sheet. And I ended up with like 400 lines and I just visually scanned. I didn't do anything sophisticated in Excel. I just scanned down and I just copied and pasted anything that was a recurring payment month after month.
All right. What was the total?
The total was $652.
That means I win the bet.
No.
Yes.
No. Because many of these are things that we are well aware of and intentionally set up because these aren't like stealth payments.
Okay.
So this is a definitional thing because, so for example, I intentionally gave in to HP, the printer company. They really want to get you on a monthly subscription for ink.
$6.
I pay them $6 a month for our freaking ink because they make it so impossible and expensive to just do it yourself. And they make it such a pain in the ass that it's like, all right, I'll just do it.
I knew we couldn't go a whole episode without everything's a pain in the ass.
Everything's a pain in the ass. The New York Times, I pay them every month because I value well done journalism.
Is that you do the $4?
No.
The $4.
No,
oh.
I do the $23.
Okay.
Our orthodontist,
big spender.
Like, we're on a payment.
You got an ortho on a subscription plan.
Well, it's like rather than pay it all up front, it's like we're going to pay over the course of years and years. So I don't count all of that stuff. But
all right. So what's the bottom line here? How are you helping the listeners here, Matt?
Well, I did in fact find several things that I immediately canceled. Things that I thought I had canceled. Like I got this app and a basketball called Dribble Up. For my kids who are basketball players to work on their dribbling skills. They used it for like a month or two. Then they stopped using it. So I tried to cancel it. I thought I had canceled it. Turns out, because everything's a pain in the ass, they never canceled it. That was $17 a month. I canceled it. And I got a refund for several months. So that was good. We signed up for a service that allowed us to see my nephew's high school basketball game. Turns out that never got canceled. $12 a month.
Subscription fees.
Canceled it. I looked at a Substacker that I like. I'm not using it anymore. Canceled it. There's $10. Bottom line is, I already, and this did take me a few more minutes, but I already canceled $40 a month. So that's $500 a year that I saved myself, just from investing, I would say, less than 30 minutes. So that's an implied $1,000 an hour I just paid myself. And I have identified right here on my list, $91 a month of potential things that we
potential
could.
Savings. Okay.
Yes. So bottom line is, I think you win the bet, but not for the reasons that you thought.
Oh, darn. Well, at least I win. So that's good.
So my advice to people is, seriously, 30 minutes, it will take you that. But I bet everyone has got, you will have an implied hourly pay of $500 to $1,000.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this right now, right when we stop recording.
You're going to do it.
I'm going to do it right now.
And
I don't think, my bet to you is, I bet less than $20 a month of things that I don't know about that I could just cancel.
Hey, look, I mean,
less than that. I don't even think there's hardly anything.
Less than 20. So that means, so let's say it's 20. Let's say it's 20.
It's less than that. No, in fact, I will make a bet with you. It's less than, I don't find anything. Because I review my expenses kind of all the time. All right, so I'm going to do it right after this show.
All right.
And I will send you the list of my recurring things, and I'll let you know if there's anything that I'm going to cancel.
I will bet you 3 months of your contributions to my 401k on this. Sound fair?
Of my current contributions to your 401k? Absolutely.
Correct. All right. You're
Sounds
on.
good.
All right. And we're holding you to this. Next episode, we're going to find out what happened. All right. We've got to wrap there. Thank you for putting me through this. I hope it was as fun for everyone else as it was for me. I hope it was more fun for everyone else than it was for me. For Mike, I'm Matt. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for joining us on Financial Life Planning. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to and rate the podcast on Apple iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. It makes a massive difference. If you have a comment or question, please email me, mike@mortonfa.com. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. This recording is for informational purposes only and should not be considered for investment advice. Opinions expressed are as of the date of recording. Such opinions are subject to change. I cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the data presented here.